Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, Canada's Emergence as a Destination for Foreign Talent. We have a great presentation ahead of us, but as a reminder, this broadcast is being recorded and a link to download the recording will be sent out after today's live session. That email should go out sometime tomorrow afternoon, so please keep an eye out on your email inboxes for that. We anticipate this webinar running for about 45 minutes, and that includes some time for question and answer. And so throughout the presentation, if you have a question, we encourage you to ask it, and you can do so using the question function that you see on the right-hand side of your screen. All right, so for those who are unfamiliar with Envoy, for nearly 20 years, Envoy has been on a mission to fix the frustrating, confusing, and inefficient immigration process. Envoy combines expert legal representation with innovative technology to deliver the only platform that makes it seamless for companies to hire, manage, and mobilize a global workforce. Envoy secures work authorization in over 150 countries, has grown 46% year to date, and works with over 1,000 customers. We are particularly proud of our NPS score, which is a testament to the employee experience that we provide. And now I'd like to introduce our main presenter for today's webinar, Marina Falkina, RCIC. As a senior global mobility specialist, Marina is in charge of providing Envoy's Canadian immigration services. Marina brings to Envoy over 16 years of experience in Canadian immigration field, inclusive of her previous experience working as an immigration assistant at the Canadian Consulate General in Detroit. Marina holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Windsor, as well as an associated degree in Humanities and Social Sciences from Washtenaw Community College in Ann Arbor. Marina is a member in good standing with the Immigration Consultants of Canada Regulatory Council, RCIC. Marina has considerable experience interacting with Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, Canada Border Services Agency, Service Canada, as well as Canadian, U.S., and global immigration attorneys and other governmental agencies. Marina, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. Happy to be here.
All right. Before we get to the main presentation, I'd like to just go briefly over the agenda for today. I'm going to kind of go with an introduction regarding the demand for global assignments, and then dive deeper into Canada and some of their immigration policies, and then we'll wrap things up with some pointers for sending talent to Canada. And then, as I mentioned, we'll save the remaining time for any questions that may come in. And then before I kick things off, there's a legal disclaimer here. I'm just going to leave the slide open or on the screen for a few more seconds. All right, let's jump into things. Starting with the demand for global assignments. So in our newest 2019 Immigration Trends Report, we asked, during the next year, do companies expect demand for work authorization outside the U.S. to increase, decrease, or remain the same? And approximately 48% of employers expect their demand for global assignments to increase during the next year. And that 48% encompasses somewhat increase or significantly increase. The reason I bring this up is because part of where they're sending talent to is, Canada. And the role that Canada is playing in global immigration. And given some recent, and I'm sure all of our attendees understand some recent USCIS policies and whatnot, Canada has been using its friendly immigration policies to aggressively attract companies, particularly technology companies. And these are just some screenshots from recent press articles examining this. As we see here, skilled foreign workers are giving up on their American dreams and turning to Canada. Canada's emerging tech markets attract investors. U.S. tech firms turn to Canada's immigration policy. And then why immigrants, students, and U.S. companies are going to Canada. And it's not just that. We found in our also in our 2019 Immigration Trends Report, in 2017, Toronto created more tech jobs than the Bay Area, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. combined. Breaking that down a little further, 38% are considering Canada for their company's expansion. 21% already have at least one office in Canada. And then additionally, kind of referring back to our previous slide, 65% consider Canada's immigration policy to be more favorable to employers than U.S. policies, which means 63% of employers are increasing their presence in Canada. And that encompasses 35% of which we are sending more people to and hiring more foreign nationals in Canada. 13% are only sending more people to Canada, and 15% are only hiring more foreign nationals in Canada. So really some interesting statistics here. Marina, from your perspective, is it surprising companies are increasing their presence in Canada?
Well, actually, I don't think that's surprising. That's not surprising at all, actually, considering the current climate, especially in the United States. We've only seen increase in interest and in, literally new offices popping in Canada, and employers realizing that they can actually take advantage and attract a lot of people who are currently perhaps not sure about their status in the United States, or they're not choosing other countries, to actually attract them to Canada. So this all makes perfect sense.
Gotcha. And so, Marina, I'm going to turn things over to you in just a second as we look at the immigration policies of Canada. Kind of starting first with the we're going to lead things off just briefly describing this report here, the 2018 Annual Report to Parliament on Immigration. And in this report, plans were unveiled to admit approximately, or just a little over 1 million new permanent residents from 2019 to 2021. And why is Canada setting these goals? Well, two reasons are aging population and low fertility rates. Kind of similar to what we've seen in other countries such as Japan. So, Marina, I'm going to turn things over to you now and kind of just describe to our audience how Canada is planning to meet these goals with their immigration policies.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Eric. And we dive right into the Global Skills Strategy. What is Global Skills Strategy? I get a lot of questions as I deal with a lot of employers, both in Canada and the United States. And, well, this is not a category. This is actually exactly what this is. This is a strategy, something that Canadian government created in order to help Canadian companies to attract the best and the brightest, in order to sustain, growth and not miss out on all of the world-class workers who perhaps, were looking at temporary employment in the United States, for choosing United Kingdom or Australia as their destination for temporary work and perhaps for permanent residence. So the Canadian government decided to break down the processing, or rather prioritize processing. So it's not a category, it is purely a strategy. Canada does not have a premium processing for applications, but in a sense, this Global Skills Strategy became a prioritizing system to process work permit applications. So let's take a look at what this actually entails and how this works. Global Skills Strategy allows for national workers to receive their work permits if they qualify in approximately 2 weeks. And of course, they do have to qualify. Now, nothing has changed in terms of the eligibility criteria. The foreign national still has to meet the requirements either under the labor market exempt work permits, and we'll talk about that in a minute, or labor market required work permits. And we will actually touch on that in the next slide when we talk about Global Talent Stream. So I actually wanted to introduce a quick example to give you an idea how Global Skills Strategy works now, as opposed to how a work permit application worked previously without this particular strategy. Let's imagine for a moment that we have an Indian national who is currently working abroad, let's say in Dubai, for a company that has a Canadian branch. This individual possesses, skills and highly unique expertise. Let's say he's an IT manager, or perhaps he is, a marketing specialist or director. Now, because this individual is currently working in UAE under the old system, so to speak, or without the global skill strategy processing, this particular application, even if he qualified into the intercompany transfer, probably would have taken weeks, if not months, because processing would go through the visa office that is responsible for the jurisdiction where the person is currently residing. So essentially, processing would take its, slow time depending on how busy the visa office is. Now, if we take this exact scenario now under the global skills strategy, regardless where the foreign national currently is, if he qualifies under the intercompany transfer, and if he meets all the other eligibility criteria, and he does his medical exam and provides the police clearances, processing essentially will be done in around 2 weeks. Now, that's not including the time to complete the biometrics, as biometrics are now required for most foreign nationals. So, in other words, it is truly a strategy to allow employers in Canada to decide how they are going to attract talent, and to understand that if there is someone who is qualified, there is now a way to bring that person faster on a priority basis because of how the processing has been, really structured. And another important element to note is that those applications are actually processed by a specialized office in Canada, although the person is working overseas, and that hasn't changed in terms of how the applications are submitted online, and it still goes to a visa office or by paper through the Visa Application Center. However, the actual decision, the moment that the application arrives and the officer sees that this actually qualifies under the global skills strategy, it is immediately rerouted to the right office. So you're not facing those delays that, again, unfortunately, some countries, they're simply backlogged, and Canadian visa offices abroad are struggling to process these applications. But under the global skills strategy, if foreign national is applying from outside Canada, if the job that is offered to the individual falls under either skill type 0, which is a managerial capacity, or skill level A, professional capacity, under the National Occupational Code, and the Canadian employer submits the offer of employment through the IRCC employer portal and pays the required compliance fee, and if all of that is put together, an application is submitted, then automatically the system will pick it up as the global skills strategy. And like I said, it should be processed in 2 weeks. Now, this is what we're talking about when it comes to labor market exempt work permits. Now, if we look at the labor market required applications, essentially it is the same process for the work permit. The foreign worker must be applying from outside Canada. However, in this case, the employer must have an LMIA confirmation, a positive labor market impact assessment through Global Talent Stream. And we will be talking about that process in a few minutes. But essentially, to kind of give you a big picture of the global skills strategy, it is a strategy to help out Canadian employers to see how they can bring talent, to help them grow, either under the labor market exempt category with 2-week processing, or with labor market impact assessment required, but again, also with expedited processing. And now we'll go into our discussion regarding Global Talent Stream. Now, in my experience, and this is a relatively young program, it was introduced in June of 2017 by Service Canada. but it's a great program. Global Talent Stream falls under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, which means that not Canada Immigration, but Service Canada is first going to review the application. It is still a labor market impact assessment. And if the LMI application under the Global Talent Stream is approved, the decision will be issued in approximately 2 weeks. So again, it is an expedited processing for the actual labor market test. And then after that, the foreign national can apply for the work permit under the Global Skills Strategy, which we just discussed in the previous slide. And again, we'll be able to receive the work permit in 2 weeks. So essentially, here we have the labor market test component that is required because the position doesn't fall under the other category. And why this has been actually quite a successful program. And although LMIA's labor market impact assessment applications are usually quite tedious, very, very detailed, well, this one is a little different. Number one, there's no recruitment required under the Global Skills Strategy. Of course, Service Canada will still want to know if the Canadian employer tried to attract Canadian workers and if they were successful or not, but there is no actual requirement to advertise. So that's a huge, huge plus, especially for all of the innovative companies who are, dying to open up offices and start hiring, and they simply don't have enough skilled or uniquely qualified Canadian workers. So essentially, the Global Talent Stream offers very timely, very responsive, and I would say predictable is a good word, as advertised on Service Canada's website. It's a very client-focused service. So what happens under the Global Talent Stream is that once the application is submitted, the Canadian employer will be working very closely with Service Canada program officer in order to review the application and in order to create a labor market benefits plan. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, we'll go over the eligibility. There's essentially two categories under the Global Talent Stream. Category A, which is a category where the employers would actually have to be designated by specific partners. Usually this is reserved for highly specialized talent, usually for innovative companies in Canada who already have very strong relationship with those designated partners. Or the most popular category, Category B, where Canadian companies are hiring highly skilled workers to fill positions in occupations that are found on the Global Talent Occupation List. Mostly those are IT occupations, however, not all of them. There's also architecture and science managers, there's engineering managers, of course, there's computer systems analysts and managers in IT field, database analysts and data administrators, and some other occupations. It's a fairly short list, but it was designed specifically to address the need and demand for very specific, highly skilled foreign national workers. And in my experience, having worked on these cases quite closely with quite a few companies, I find that this program is working. As I mentioned, it was introduced in June 12th, 2017, and it is still under a 2-year pilot, but I believe this will become a permanent program. It is truly designed for innovative companies in Canada to boost everything that they're doing in Canada and to hire the best of the best. Now, as part of the requirement, as I mentioned, there is, although there's no recruitment, there is a mandatory labor market benefits plan that has to be as a result of the application, it has to be created. So the unique element of this particular program is that you may not have a good plan when you submit your application. You're actually even allowed to leave a section blank and to indicate that we will discuss with the program officer in order to create a labor market benefits plan. Now, why they've introduced this? I think this is a great I honestly think this is a great idea because growth comes both ways. It's bringing foreign talent into Canada, but also growth comes from within. So by making the requirement to create the labor market benefits plan, Service Canada said, okay, you are going to be bringing in talent into Canada, but let's sit down together and figure out what commitments and what activities you as the employer are going to undertake while the foreign national worker is, working for the company in order to attract more Canadian workers, in order to invest in training Canadian workers, in order to transfer skills to Canadian workers. So in my mind, I think it makes perfect sense because it helps the Canadian company to grow inside and out. So when this application gets submitted, like I said, there's no recruitment requirement, and for the first time applicants, there's some evidence of business legitimacy that would be required from the Canadian company. And then within probably a day or two, the employer will receive a phone call to review the application. It will be fairly detailed. And then there will be a second phone call, very detailed. It can take an hour and a half to 2 hours, where the program officer will actually speak with the employer and go over the labor market benefits plan. And believe me, at least on the calls that I've sat and listened to how officers work, I feel that they are truly and genuinely interested in helping out Canadian employers, because this plan is not just for the officers' perusal. This is the actual plan that is supposed to help Canadian companies to grow, yes, to be compliant. Compliance is huge under this program, of course. But I feel that the program is really designed, it's geared towards being very client-focused service and to help Canadian companies with their initiatives and with their abilities to attract local talent and to invest in Canadian labor market. So in my view, this is a very good program, and I hope it stays. There might be some modifications, who knows. Important element also to remember is that there will be an annual progress review as per approved labor market benefit plan that, again, as I mentioned, once the LMIA under the Global Talent Stream is approved, the actual plan that will be signed by the employer and the program officer will be attached to the LMIA approval. Now, there will be 12-month reviews as per the approved plan, so that the officer will call the employer and will review whether the company is actually meeting the commitments that they have said they would do, whether they're hiring at the speed that they said they would hire. And that is actually separate from the actual employer compliance, which again is fairly heavy under the temporary foreign worker stream. So there's two things to consider. And of course, the labor market benefits plan is, again, it is for the employer to follow, and in no way the officer is going to be forcing anyone to put something there that the employer doesn't feel comfortable doing. It has to be really realistic, and it is, in my experience, again, from what I've seen, the officers are being very accommodating and very realistic, and they're taking into consideration the business need, a particular industry that the company is operating in Canada. And again, there could be and will be an audit or inspection or compliance, review, which again is separate from the annual progress review under the Global Talent Stream.
Marina, I think we're going to move on to the next section here, global parking. What can you tell us about this? And we first mentioned this as an alternative for the H-1B visa. So what more insights can you provide on global parking?
Great, thank you. Yes, global parking. I've seen a huge increase in interest of many companies, especially in the United States, but not only. We get requests from companies in the UK and Australia, where basically retaining talent is important. And of course, if United States or another country doesn't have, very immigration-friendly rules, or if simply the situation is such that the foreign national is unable to remain with a particular entity overseas or in the United States, that's where Canada is becoming very, very attractive for for parking on the global scale. And companies are becoming interested in considering, okay, can we actually transfer this individual, maybe even for a year, sometimes even for 6 months, sometimes for 2 years. Let's see if we can transfer this person to Canada and see how this person can benefit our Canadian entity. And then after that, perhaps we'll be able to transfer the person back to the United States or to whichever other entity they are then able to apply for another work permit. So in a way, it introduces an option in a lot of situations where otherwise the person perhaps, could leave the company. So retaining talent becomes critical. And in this particular situation, Canada is really, I don't want to say it's coming to the rescue because in a lot of situations it's difficult, but especially in the current climate where a lot of people are unfortunately not chosen in the H-1B lottery. And some companies, I get so many requests, they're proactively considering their options. They're looking, okay, let's look at Canada, let's look at the UK, let's look at Australia, let's look at Japan, let's look at Singapore. Let's see what options we have in order to actually keep this person, if not necessarily in the United States. What if the person is not selected, under the lottery? What can we do to retain this incredible person, make sure that they can continue working in one of our entities? So that is certainly becoming a very, very key component, and I've seen an increase in interest when it comes to companies who do have Canadian entities. I would even say that a few years ago, maybe they were not even thinking about Canada. Maybe their first choice was another country. But now, not only because of the proximity, but also realizing that now there is global skills strategy that will allow people who qualify to actually get their work permit in 2 weeks, sometimes even less. I remember there was a record case, and I don't know what it was, but it was, I believe, it was approved in 2 days. It was a very fast processing. Again, it was global skills strategy. And the person was in a situation where his status is going to expire in the United States, and it was just really a race against the clock. But, we managed to get that done. So this is certainly something that is gaining interest, and it allows, again, to strategize employers how to best navigate the system. And of course, the goal is to retain the best and the brightest. And perhaps it's better to transfer them to Canada for a bit and then, transfer them back to the United States or to another affiliate global office. So this is certainly gaining momentum.
Gotcha. Interesting. So Marina, what I guess tips/pointers do you have for sending talent up north or sending talent to Canada?
Well, in my experience, and what I have seen, especially in the current climate, I do a lot of assessments to determine the best route for a particular individual, to be transferred to Canada if the possibility exists. Of course, considering the foreign national citizenship and their current status in the United States or home country, in a lot of cases, it is people who are in the U.S. That becomes critical because a lot of things kind of stem from there. Our timeline, the feasibility of this whole enterprise, if it's even going to be feasible, possible, what are the options? So first thing to kind of look at is the current status and foreign national citizenship. And number two for me is big because coming from my experience working for the Canadian government and knowing how a lot of officers think and operate, and of course having the regulations in the back of my mind, there has to be a genuine need for the foreign national services, in Canada. So if there's the actual genuine need for the person to be in Canada, then that is definitely there. Then, chances are that we'll be able to go through the process. So we have to really look at the genuineness of the offer. And also brings me to the next point. Consider the actual tangible benefit to the Canadian employer. Why these things? This is exactly what the officer would probably be looking at, because they're thinking the global skills strategy is all about benefiting the Canadian companies to allow them to grow, to hire whom they need to hire on the expedited basis, right? And the same for global talent streams. So does this person have the tangible, skills that are transferable? Does the person have unique, unusual skills? Are they proprietary? Are they managerial? How long the person has been working for the company? Is this truly not currently available within the Canadian company or even Canadian labor market? So these things become really critical to consider from the get-go, because that's exactly what the officer will be looking at. Another interesting element that I wanted to throw in there is to actually consider the activities that the person will be performing in Canada. And I'm specifically using the word activities, not the job duties, because in a lot of cases, certain activities fall under certain exemptions where a work permit may not be required. A foreign national may still require a visa, let's say someone from, again, an Indian citizen, but he might be required to travel to Canada to perform certain very narrowly defined work, for example, after-sales services. Now, after-sales services do not require work permit. The person may still require a visa, but they do not require work permit. So looking at the actual activities to be performed in Canada and for how long they will be performed, that's another key element to kind of look at and to see if it's going to be a quick process, if you're looking at a very time-consuming, process under the global talent stream, which you may not, want to commit, or it may not be even necessary for you to commit. And another important tip, and I'd say very important now, is to really consider if foreign national has any prior record, especially DUIs. This is a fairly complex area, and I'm not a criminal lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a licensed consultant, as a little disclaimer. And I don't have criminal law background, but this becomes a very key element, because a lot of people say, well, this was just, a DUI, it was 5 years ago, was dismissed or whatever. In some cases, it doesn't matter. A person may still be found inadmissible. So looking at the foreign national's previous record, and if there's anything at all, it is better to really consider it sooner rather than later, because it essentially may prevent a person from applying for a visa on a quick basis. Even if it's a U.S. citizen who does not require a visa and he can just apply for a work permit at the border, but still this could really slow everything down considerably. And if you had known about this beforehand, maybe we would have selected a different candidate, although we could still, work on this particular application and see if the inadmissibility could be overcome. But essentially that becomes a very, very critical point to consider before you are looking to transfer someone to Canada, or hire someone who happens to be a foreign national and who would be a new hire for your Canadian company.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Marina. So now we have about 10 minutes left. Marina, thank you for that excellent presentation, diving deep into Canada's immigration policies. As I open the floor for questions, Marina, we've already had some coming in. I just any final remarks for our attendees to walk away with today?
Well, I would say that the global skills strategy and global talent stream are really they are designed truly to help out Canadian companies. Now, they may not be for everyone, especially global talent stream, but I think understanding how the process works and what the government is actually looking for when they are reviewing those applications, I think that is important. Now, again, especially global talent stream may not be for everyone because of the commitments that the Canadian company has to really sign up for and then eventually do. But I think these are two things to kind of look at and consider. Because they're excellent strategies and excellent programs, and hopefully more things will come from these, and hopefully global talent stream will there will be some modifications again, I don't know, maybe not, but hopefully more good stuff will come from it. So welcome everyone who has any particular interest in those programs, and look forward to working with many of you in the future.
Gotcha. Thank you. So as we wait for a couple more questions to come in, just want to bring up some future webinars we have coming up. This Thursday, May 9th, we're going to Perm Recruitment 101. And then next Thursday, May 16th, is a rerun of a webinar we did. And this is the ABCs of Immigration, HR Guide to U.S. Immigration Visas and Green Cards. I encourage everyone to check that out. And then be sure to subscribe to our mailing list so you can receive the latest webinar invites and content updates. And then finally, I'm going to leave this slide up until we sign off. These are Sherman HRCI credits, so please take a moment to copy these down. These will also be included in tomorrow's email. So Marina, we'll just start off here. What is the Canadian equivalent of the H-1B?
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I think this is one of the questions that I do get from time to time. Well, technically, there isn't an equivalent of an H-1B, but I would say that in many aspects, the LMIA, which is a labor market test under the Global Talent Stream that we've discussed, you could consider this as a parallel program, because essentially it's for new hires. And again, I'm no expert in H-1B. I used to do U.S. immigration many, many years ago. But typically these would be for new hires. And however, it's not a lottery. It's not. It's really a very different process. But in a way, I would say that for companies that need to hire in specific occupations, as I mentioned, under the Global Talent Stream, especially innovative companies looking to hire in IT, high tech, then that is probably your best bet, and a parallel program. Yeah.
Gotcha. Let's see here. So the question is, are U.S. companies with Canadian entities treated any differently than Canadian-based companies?
So if I understand the question correctly, let's say we have a U.S. parent company with a Canadian subsidiary, for example. This would be an ideal case scenario for the intercompany transfer, obviously, assuming that there's a qualified corporate relationship. I'm not sure if I understand the question, because it says any differently than Canadian-based companies. If it's just a Canadian-based company with no affiliates anywhere, then it would simply be a different, the work permit for foreign national will probably be only possible under the Global Talent Stream or under the LMIA regular processing if the person doesn't qualify. So I'm not sure if I'm answering this question, but it really, there's no difference in terms of treatment, if this is the question. The only difference would be under which category a foreign national would qualify, whether it's by being employed by the U.S. Parent entity, for example, in a specialized knowledge capacity for a year, and then being transferred to Canada. So that would be an intercompany transfer, and under the Global Skills Strategy. Or, for example, if you have just a Canadian company with no branches, no subsidiaries anywhere, and they're looking to hire a foreign national from the UK, for example, or from Japan, from anywhere else, then there would be a new hire, and chances are the Canadian employer would have to go through the labor market impact assessment, hopefully under the Global Talent Stream, to get the expedited processing. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that would be my answer.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. Let's see here. Other than Toronto, are there any other Canadian cities attracting companies, and in particular, tech companies?
Absolutely. Huge growth in Vancouver. West Coast has been just really booming. And if before, most of the requests that I would get, they would be, from Ontario, Toronto, sometimes get Quebec, but Quebec is quite different because of their own system. But definitely Vancouver, definitely BC, especially for the innovative companies that are just so hungry to get the best and the brightest, especially considering that Seattle is so close. A lot of companies are collaborating, obviously. A lot of companies have their branches or looking to either open a branch in Seattle or vice versa. Companies in the United States are looking to open their branches or subsidiary offices in Vancouver. So certainly the West Coast and Vancouver, I would say, definitely on the rise and huge growth.
Gotcha. Thank you. Let's see here. Marina, I chatted you a couple questions. Let me know if you see those.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. Yes, I do see them. Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So we'll start with let's see here. Let me pull it back up. Any threat to global skills strategy / global talent stream if a conservative government wins the Canadian election in October?
Of course, the election is coming up. Well, it's difficult to say. I don't have the crystal ball in terms of that. I mean, anything can happen. And in my experience, and I've been doing this for 16 years, unpredictability is probably the word. I love what I do, but sometimes it doesn't really matter whether there's a change in government, a new minister. We've seen quite a few. To be honest, my gut feeling, I don't really see a threat to either. I think the global talent stream has really shown that it is working, especially because they're looking to make this a permanent program. So in my mind, that is a huge positive sign. Now, again, who knows what's going to happen, right? But I think this is here to stay because. Again, the system is far from being perfect. I live in Canada and I, deal with the Canadian government every day, but I don't think there's any threat. Again, we'll wait and see. Don't quote me on that one. Hopefully not.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then the second question, I think we're at about 1:44, so this will be our final question. Under global skills strategy or global talent stream, should the employees have English proficiency test scores ready, or can they just get work permit with a job offer and other credits?
Okay, great, thank you. This is actually a very good question. I would say that in my experience is this: if the foreign national has been working and especially studying in the United States, and then the company is looking to transfer them over to Canada, whether under the GSS or GATS. I have not seen a Canadian consulate requesting the English test. I mean, it's obvious to them the person is fluent. I have not seen any request. Now, on the other hand, if you have a foreign national who is coming from, let's say, Russia or Ukraine, Bulgaria, I would really kind of gauge and see, first of all, what is the level of this person's education, whether they actually studied in English. In a lot of cases, looking at the situation, I'd say, you know what, I think you should get an English test just to be on a safe side. It is not required in a lot of situations, but in my experience, like I said, this has been my approach. If someone who's been working and studying in the United States for quite some time, then again, I've never seen Canadian consulate or visa offices requesting the English test. But when it comes to other countries, then yes, I would say to be on a safe side, it would be a good idea. Yeah. Thank you. That was a very good question.
Great. All right. Well, we're going to end things there. Great questions from those who asked them. Thank you so much for typing those in. Marina, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Found this to be a very informative presentation. Again, recording of this webinar and the slide deck will be emailed out to everyone in attendance tomorrow afternoon. So please keep an eye out on your email inboxes for those links to download. Once again, Marina, thank you for joining us, and for everyone in attendance, thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Eric. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. Bye.